Hello, networkers, and in this episode, this A&E off topic, I want to talk about two-factor authentication. I want to talk about what it is, why is it important, and why am I doing this video in the first place. So let's do that in this video. Okay, so first things first, what is two-factor authentication? Now, as network engineers or as regular average day people who are not network engineers, I'm confident many of you know what two-factor authentication is. But let's assume that you are watching this video and you're not clear or you don't know what it is. So here's what it is in a nutshell. So two-factor authentication is really the process of using two passwords to log into something. Typically it's a website, but it could be a router, it could be a firewall, it could be anything. Now, in terms of the two passwords, the first password would typically be a static password, a password that you create, which will likely be insecure. It'll probably be something like password 123 or something that you can easily remember, right? And then once you log in with that static password, then you are sent a temporary password, a one-time password that is usually sent by an RSA token if you have that, or nowadays it is sent via SMS as a text message or maybe as an email. And once you get that text message, it'll give you like a one-time code that you have to type in very quickly into the interface of what you're logging into. And once you're in, ta-da, now you have access to the website or the networking device that you are trying to reach. Now, why is two-factor authentication important? Well, it is one of the strongest effective security solutions out there, and it has been around for a very, very, very long time. We have implemented two-factor authentication for very high secure requirement environments. Financial, government, we enable that on all of our routers or switches. And we did that for authorization, but also for accounting capabilities as well. But two-factor authentication is effective because it does something called, it's dynamic compared to static. So when you look at any kind of a security exploit that usually happens, why does it happen? It happens because there is something that is static, something that is a known threat. When you look at what a firewall typically does, a firewall is looking when there's traffic that's going through and there's particular firewall policies, is looking at that traffic and is looking at its IPS signature database, the virus signature database, the application control signature database, and it's just looking for a match. And if there's a match, then it will drop it or be monitored or be allowed. But it is something that is static that is looking for and to stop it. It's not dynamic. That's why ransomware is a particular threat that is hard to control because it changes. It is something that is dynamic. Or what about a password? Okay. So you of course have your static password, and from there, as a hacker, I can run a dictionary attack. And if I figure out what that password is, then I'm logged in. Again, it is all about exploiting static or known information. But with two-factor authentication, that makes the requirements a lot harder to gain access to an account. Because yes, you might figure out what is that static password. Okay, yes, I got that password. But the one-time password is a dynamic password. This is something that will always change and can only be used at one given time. Without both of this information, it is irrelevant. Now remember, you may say, cool, I got this passcode now. That was only valid at that particular time period. Once that person logged on, it's no longer valid. So it provides very, very strong security that makes it really hard for any hacker to get around that because it's dynamic instead of static. Okay, so why am I doing this video in the first place? As networking people, we all know what is two-factor authentication. Heck, my parents know what is two-factor authentication, and they are definitely not in the technology field. They are retired. I'm bringing this up though for a couple of reasons. One, many of us know that a lot of the public accounts that we access, like Twitter, for example, or Tumblr, that they have an option for enabling it for two-factor authentication. But many of us are not doing that. We always go into the mindset of, I'll deal with it when I have some free time. It's important, but I'll deal with it when I have some free time. And what I'm telling you is that Today is the time to start doing that. Any public account that you have, enable them for two-factor authentication. It is very, very important. Furthermore, doing that is going to give you more exposure to that you need to also extend that recommendation to your company or to your customers to make sure that their public-based accounts are also enabled for two-factor authentication. The world contains evil because human beings are aggressive animals, and hackers are part of that aggressiveness, and you have to protect and secure your network environment. That's why network security is really important, and we see that with the training that you are buying, that it is important for securing the environment, and having two-factor authentication with public accounts is critical. So there it is. Enable that in all your accounts. I've been doing that for such a long time. Any account that I have, I always look at the path. Is there a two-factor authentication option for logging in? And most times it is. So I enable that. So I have enabled for Tumblr and Twitter and Office 365. I have enabled it on a lot of particular things. And I have made those recommendations to my own customers. They have been hacked several times, hacked into their public accounts. Office 365 for them has been hacked. They have a lot of different spam messages. And once we start setting up two-factor authentication, it solved those problems. So that's why it's important as network engineers. And one of the last videos that I talked about top technologies in 2019. And one of those is with network security. Security is very important. I personally see that with the training that you are buying. It is security related. It is a critical business requirement. And therefore, as network engineers, yes, we got to do networking. Yes, we got to do DevOps, but security, having a mindset of always being secure is important. Not just with public accounts, but also with your networking equipment as well, especially if it will be accessed over the internet. I cannot explain that any clearer than I can. Firewalls, guess what? They're connected to the internet. And with all the firewalls that I manage for different customers, regardless of the firewall, I see so many attempts of people trying to log on. They're using kitty scripts to try to log on to the firewalls, right? And it is really important. And sometimes they're attempting the default passwords, depending on the firewall products. They're attempting all of that, right? This is the opportunity where you need to enable two-factor authentication on the FortiGates, on the Palo Alto networks. They all support that. You enable that, especially if they will be accessed over a public domain like the internet. Furthermore, put in access controls. Specify what particular IPs can access your firewalls. That quickly eliminates the problem, right? Because when you have public services, that means any source can access your equipment to do good or to do bad. So once you put access controls, that will basically drop overnight. So putting in access controls is vital, and it's what I do for any firewall that we manage. We put in the actual range of networks that is accepted to administer those firewalls or the routers or the switches if they will be accessed publicly. Remember, as network engineers, you got to have a security mindset. And users do not like security. They hate security because it is not convenient. Having a complex password with capital letters and spaces and phrases, and people hate that. So what happens is they type in these long passwords and they put it like on a post-it note, they put it on the computer. I don't blame them. It's too complex. Well, that eliminates that if you have two-factor authentication, because there is still a strong level of security. And security is like a tug of war between convenience and being safe and secure. Tug of war goes back and forth, back and forth. But you have to just lock down and secure the environment, not just with your with your firewalls, but with your routers and your switches, implementing best practices, doing everything that is recommended, because this is part of securing and creating a reliable network environment. And we're done with this episode. So if you have any questions about being a network engineer, post this question below in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and support us at routhub.net or on my Patreon page. And until next time, keep networking.